All right, guys, what's going on here? It's Jimmy here. I have a special guest here for part two, Lieutenant Colonel Anthony Shaffer here. If you didn't see my first video here, I'll link it down below in the pinned comments here, where we had a great conversation about Russia and what they're doing right now with some pretty shocking information. Thanks for being on our show here, Tony. And I want to ask you right now here about a couple different things. We'll start with North Korea.
Sure.
We have two nuclear subs docked there right now. And the president there, Kim Jong-un, is not very happy about this. And also they have one of our soldiers there who kind of went AWOL.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that?
So on the submarine thing, we've been dealing with North Korea being upset with us over anything we do in the South since the end of I can't even say the war is ended. The war in North Korea is not ended. It's an armistice. And that's why we have the joint security area, which I'll circle back to regarding the defection. So because we are still at a technical state of war, you have a demilitarized zone between the North and South. The DMZ runs roughly east and west across the Korean Peninsula. I think the 42nd parallel. Right, yeah, you're right. I'll talk about that in a second. I got kicked out of South Korea because I went into North Korea illegally because of it. The chief of station found out. And anyway, we'll talk about that in a second. Because I've been exactly where that kid is. I mean, literally, I probably stepped in the same areas that I stepped back. I didn't keep going. I came back, but he kept going. Anyway, we'll talk about that in a second.
Oh, wow.
But So regarding we've had something called Ulchi Focus Lens, which is an exercise we do on an annual basis with South Korea to exercise our ability to protect and support any defense of South Korea from North Korea. North Korea has been very antagonistic. They continue to be. Frankly, the South Koreans are antagonize the North too. It goes back and forth. Nobody's a saint here.
Yeah.
But with that said, we've done this. So Kim Jong-un, his protesting this is nothing new, and his provocations and threatening missile launches, whatever, they do that all the time. I think Un does recognize that if there's ever a release of a nuclear weapon by North Korea, that he will probably cease to exist. And Donald Trump said that. I think we have ample ability to reach out and touch him. So I think it's something that everybody's kind of learned to deal with. It's like, yeah, he's going to complain, but we're going to continue to do what we do. There's times we pull back and don't do as much when we want to negotiate, when we want to get them at the table and negotiate something. For right now, I don't consider any of this out of anything that's going on unusual. But to your point, what is unusual is this soldier defecting. So apparently, this soldier had been held in a military prison for 30 days before he defected. He was going to be returned to the United States. I got to tell you, Jimmy, how they let this guy go to the DMZ on a tour? I have
plane.
Yeah, I was like, I have no idea.
I guess he was waiting for his plane, and they must not have had a guard right there with him.
Normally, you guard people like him. Yeah, normally you have at least one MP with a sidearm at the airport, making sure you can't wander off and do stupid stuff like this. Just saying. So anyway, so this kid apparently
it's not like, I don't think the guy was going to go to prison for life or something. Apparently, not running to North Korea was a better choice. I don't think he's thinking that now, but
yeah, I think he's going to come to regret that. And by the way, the reason you haven't seen any movement on this is because North Korea hasn't decided if they can benefit propaganda-wise from this. So it's kind of like everybody's at a pause.
Have we heard back from them? Do you know?
No, we have not to my knowledge, not to the people I talked to. They have not come back. So I still think they're trying to figure out, the North Koreans, if there's any propaganda value to keeping him. If there is, they're going to keep him. If not, it's like they may even use this as, we want to show goodwill. Here he is back. I mean, everything is going to be done based on North Korean interests at this point. So I think they're trying to figure it out.
I mentioned this.
Where he went.
Go ahead.
Yeah, go ahead.
I mentioned this on my show that one of the last prisoners that they had of ours was a student who apparently they say ripped off a propaganda poster years ago, and they gave him back
killed him
in a coma, and then he died a few days later.
Right.
That's any indication of how they treat prisoners. This might not go well.
Yeah, no, I agree. And there was one other guy I think defected in the '60s. An NCO kind of like this guy defected, and he lived out his days as a propaganda tool for them. But no, I think
And he never
this
came
this is
back.
he never came back. No, he
Oh
never came
wow.
back. I'd have to Google it. Now the DMZ is known, Jimmy, because both sides have people leave there. As a matter of fact, back in '89, a PRC CCP member, I think it was a major from the Chinese military, defected to the South. And we've had a number of North Koreans defect to the South via this area. And it's deadly serious. They have the DMZ, for those who have never been there, is heavily guarded by both sides. There's landmines, there's machine guns. It's all those
This
things
guy had to run
that
through landmines.
no, he didn't. No. So what he did is so we have an area that has been famous, Panmunjom. It's called the Joint Security Area, the JSA. And so in the JSA, this is where you saw President Trump walk across into North Korea in that area there. So what we saw during Trump's visit was kind of all that area. So what happened is this kid was on a tour. You can go on tours of the Joint Security Area. You can. I mean, you go up and they show it to you, and yeah, you're literally right across them. So I actually went into one of the buildings. What they do, Jimmy, is we have people who meet with them on a routine basis. Both sides meet. They negotiate informally. They have individual meeting rooms where you can have a North Korean and a South Korean, or a North Korean and American go and meet privately, private meeting rooms. So that's where I actually went into North Korea and got in trouble because I wasn't supposed to be there, because I was actually chief of Army's clandestine human intelligence program, and they were afraid if I got captured, I knew too much, which is probably true. But I did it anyway and got kicked out. And so the chief of station, Dennis Obermeyer, didn't appreciate my being kind of so fluid with my movement. Anyway, well, that's another story. But so this area where the kid defected is there at this joint security area where negotiations take place. So what he apparently did is that at a time of his choosing, he sprinted across the joint security area, the DMZ, and ended up on the North Korean side and surrendered. Say basically, I'm defecting. So that's how it happened, and it all happened within less than 10 seconds. I mean, literally, he ran across. He was on the other side. Once you're on the other side, you ain't coming back. There's a bridge there, Jimmy, called the Bridge of No Return, where and it's like you go over that bridge, you're never coming back. So that's what the kid did. I don't think he thought it through. I think his prison time in North Korea is going to be a lot more severe and longer than had he just come back to the States and served whatever time he was supposed to, based on whatever he had done in the U.S. Army that they were going to hold him accountable for. So
that'll be a tough decision for him, unfortunately.
He's going to be pretty tired of rat meat and kimchi by the time he gets back. Just saying.
If he gets fed, yeah.
If he even gets that.
Yeah, so I want to ask you, we got, North Korea firing these missiles on a daily basis, and I see a lot of comments in my comment section of either one or the other. I see some comments of people saying, why are we pushing North Korea so far to the edge? I see the same thing of China, with China, shooting missiles over Taiwan and really Russia. And we have some people saying, oh, we shouldn't be pushing these guys to the edge. It could start World War III. But then I see people on the other side saying, oh, we have to have a strong military presence. We can't have a weak president. We can't be weak. We can't just let them run amok, because then they'll take over these other countries. They'll do what they want. What are your thoughts on that? Like, how do we hold the line and not be too far one way, not be too far the other way? What would you advise the president of if it was
I'm a Reagan
or Democrat president? Yeah. What do you do there?
I'm a Reagan guy, so I do believe that it's peace through strength, that we must have a strong military and stand up to those who are bullies. I once debated Rand Paul, not Ron Paul, Rand Paul, Congressman Paul, on the John Stossel show when he declared he was running for president. As a matter of fact, I was very proud of the fact that he had me come in and debate him on some of these issues. So one of the issues was, who's responsible for the land, for the sea, for the protection of the sea? Why are we, the United States, doing that? Nobody pays us to do it. So Congressman Paul's position was, we should stop doing it. And my position is, while I'm very libertarian in certain areas, this is not one of them. Because if you give it up to someone else to allow that to happen. First off, if you don't do it, there's going to be piracy, there's going to be chaos, there's going to be things that we don't want, secondary effects. And the third issue is you don't want the Chinese doing it because the Chinese aren't good guys. They aren't. They're communists. And as much as I don't like pointing out the obvious because people tend to get annoyed with me, the Chinese will run things the way they run their country, very totalitarian and very much focused on China and what is good for China, not for the world. I think we've been very benevolent, Jimmy, in our ability to use our military force to benefit everybody. I mean, yeah, we don't get paid to do it, but we allow free trade, free commerce. We protect the lines of communication, lines of commerce, because it's the right thing to do. We've got a lot of warts as America, but that's not one of them. We've done a good job. So my argument is, if you give that up to China or some other nation, then our economy is ultimately going to eventually suffer because our businesses, our trade interests will suffer as well. So I do believe it's in our interest to protect Taiwan. Taiwan is the foundry of something like 62%, 92% of all chips that go in cars, something like 1/4 of all high tech chips that go into high order technology machines. They're a technology foundry. So I think we should protect that. Our allies have interest in the region: Japan, China, South Korea, Philippines, Vietnam, and Vietnam is an ally now. New
Interesting
Zealand,
how Germany
Australia.
and Vietnam are allies now.
I know, isn't it strange?
It wasn't
But
that long ago that they were
no,
not.
right. And that's my point. So we, in that interest, China is trying to do things to intimidate those countries because they want the resources in the Pacific Ocean and the Red Sea. China has a huge need for protein. So if China left to its own devices, it would fish the heck out of the oceans and leave our allies with nothing. So is that of our interest? Are we going to benefit from that? No, I'm not going to get any tuna from the South China Sea, but our allies need to. So I'm just saying, we need to examine what is in our interest, not necessarily should the American farmers benefit from what we're doing? Well, maybe not. But we do have allies and a way of doing business which has been very effective to allow the maximum number of countries in the world to have open commerce and trade. So I think that is something we should invest in and maintain. And so if we don't face off against the PRC, if we don't face off against North Korea regarding our interests regarding South Korea, and I do argue North Korea is still a proxy of the PRC, then if we don't do that, then we will jeopardize our interests. And I do believe that we have to do it from a position of strength. And I don't agree with the Biden administration and most of its policies to curtsy to, literally, or kowtow to the PRC and what they're doing regarding many of our policies.
And, I've seen this with, Speaker Kevin McCarthy at first, where before he was Speaker, he was a little bit, we shouldn't maybe be funding Ukraine so much. We should be a little bit more budget conscious. And that, when he was going to maybe become Speaker, people were maybe thinking, the money might stop. And now he's kind of changed his position on that, especially when it relates to Taiwan. And now he's saying, China is watching what's happening in Ukraine, and China's watching that like a hawk, because whatever happens in Ukraine, China could do with Taiwan. And it reminds me, and I think it reminds a lot of people of what happened in World War II with Hitler. And Hitler was allowed to just take over country after country after country until they were stopped. And I think the world is watching what is happening in Ukraine with Putin, or some people call him Hitler 2.0. And it kind of, the world is watching right now. What are your thoughts on, China and Russia just being allowed to just take over country after country, as opposed to, comments of people saying, we got to stop helping other countries and only help ourselves?
It's a great question, and there's no easy answer. So let me try to give you an answer that I think is what I promote. And this is what I give. What I'm giving you, Jimmy, is what I give to people I advise in the government. This is from the Progressive Caucus. This is $113 billion we've spent in Ukraine to no effect. It has had no positive effect. There's no indication that all this money is going to stop Russia. So ask yourself, is spending money in a hope of stopping Russia going to help us deter the Chinese? No, the Chinese are going to look at this and say, man, they spent all that money and they still didn't win. Wow, they suck. That's what they're going to think. It's like, yeah, the U.S. is ineffective. So what I'm saying is if you're going to be in this to beat Russia, you better darn well beat Russia, or else you're going to look weak. And that's what we look weak. Same with the issues regarding Afghanistan. We could talk about the Afghanistan debacle. I know for a fact Joe Biden and company knew exactly what was about to happen. They let it happen anyway. And I was part of Mike Pompeo. I spoke with Mike Pompeo about the plan. As a matter of fact, for your audience to know that the last chapter of Operation Dark Heart is the path to victory. They took parts of that chapter, and that's the way we were going to leave Afghanistan. Just saying. I mean, I was part of that conversation, and my concept was part of that conversation as part of the Trump administration. What Biden did showed complete weakness. What Biden is doing now is showing complete weakness. So I'm all for strength and showing strength to those who would do things to create an environment where they can become aggressive and take over things. What the Biden administration is doing is not showing resolve to China. It's doing the opposite. It's showing that no matter how much money we throw at something, we still fail. And again, I see bad things coming over the summer. I see the Russians returning to the offensive within the next 3 weeks, based on the numbers of things showing up, based on where I think things are going. So I don't believe for a minute that the way we're fighting the war in Ukraine is going to deter Russia, to deter the Chinese one iota at this point.
But let me ask you a little bit of a counterpoint there. You know,
Sure.
think about, we spend how much on our military budget a year? It's like 800 billion.
828 billion, I think, something along that line for the current budget.
So we've spent like, 1/8 of that, given it to Ukraine. And look at all the damage that Russia has taken to their army, man.
No doubt. They have. And they've lost an enormous number of tanks. I mean,
we haven't had to lose a single man. And all we've helped do is help Ukraine defend their own country from an invader. And we've spent 1/8 of 1 year's budget helping another country defend from an invader.
Great point. So let me break that out. One of the reasons that money has not been used effectively, because at least a quarter of it's going to corruption, because those weapon systems that we're sending them aren't going to the front. That's first off. Secondly, a lot of that money went to corruption. I agree with Cy Hirsch. I think Cy is correct. I have not talked to Cy. I know Cy, but I think a lot of this money is going to folks it ain't supposed to go to, and enriching people. So that's another reason it's ineffective. So my belief is we should not be funding.
What would you do? Would you put U.S. personnel there to supervise it, or?
No, Jimmy, we already have people there on the ground. Just saying.
So how do you?
So you
see that better.
You take a step back and stop trying to push the Ukrainians to do things they're not ready for, or you have generals competing for who's going to get the biggest chunk of the pie once they take on Russia, because all you're doing is eroding your own ability. What you need to do at this point is stop the bleeding. What we've instructed them to do is not going to achieve victory. I'm one of those that says it's time to sue for a negotiated ceasefire. You're not going to push Putin out with what we've given them. And let me tell you, the F-16s ain't going to make a big difference. They are not. Even Lloyd Austin, Secretary Austin. And by the way, I served in combat with Austin when he was a brigadier general. I know him personally. And I know Mark Milley. Mark Milley was my guy in the transition team as Trump transitioned. So even Milley said, don't expect this to change things dramatically. What we need to do is come together on our side and figure out how to do it. Remember, to your point, we the United States were able to defeat Russia without firing a shot in the 80s under the Reagan administration. I promote, and I'm a Reagan guy, that we need to figure out how to emulate that. We're not going to be able to create it one for one, but there's things we did to basically push the Russians over the edge, to make them self-destruct. There's a number of things that we did to basically, like SDI. I don't know if you know this, Jimmy. SDI was the ultimate deception operation. There's no way we were ever going to have lasers in orbit taking missiles down, but the Russians didn't know that, and they believed it, and we pushed them to spend so much money they could not afford to spend. So I'm not saying
might even be possible here soon. you know?
Well, but as I'm saying, it's like it all this time later. Now we might have it, but not back then. But the Russians believed we would.
Yeah.
It's all about getting inside their head. So what I'm not saying we should do that. I'm saying we should do something like that.
Yeah.
You need to get inside their mentality and figure out how can we really F with these guys? How can we make them do stupid stuff? So that's what I'm saying. We should go back to your
better
point.
at that now than we are. You know, him with all this diversion stuff, the new, we might take over Poland, oh this, oh that. I feel like they're actually better at that than the US is.
Because we have the wrong people in charge. One of the things that Reagan did, do you know what Reagan did that most caused fear in the Russian government?
What's that?
So Russians thought he was a cowboy, but they didn't take him seriously. The one thing Reagan did was, and I think it was 1983, he fired the air traffic controllers when they were on strike. And the Russians saw that and it's like, oh my God, this guy is serious.
Yeah.
He will. So that was the one point that made them fear him, because he's serious. He's going to do stuff. So that's what I'm saying. Nobody thinks Joe Biden's serious. Nobody takes Blinken. Nobody thinks that Lloyd Austin is going to do anything seriously. So the most effective element of deterrence is credibility.
Yeah.
Jimmy, nobody has credibility at this point, and that's what you have to find a way to fix. So,
yeah, I hear you. That's
I'm all for winning bloodlessly, but to do that, you got to actually have someone who understands how to get inside the other guy's head. And at this point, I would argue we don't have that.
Yeah. See, the problem I just me personally seeing with the ceasefire is that everything I hear from, trying to, provide a treaty with Russia is they want Ukraine's land, and Ukraine doesn't want to give up their land.
That's true. I agree.
How do you now a ceasefire, temporary ceasefire? I don't know how they would negotiate that. But the problem is Russia would be growing stronger and stronger by the day.
Russia is growing. No, they're doing it now, Jimmy. So this is one of the things that we have not accepted on our side. Russia has returned. They never abandoned the ability to bring back factories, Cold War factories, to establish the ability to generate force. So right now they're producing, by things I look at, they're producing probably 10 T-90M tanks a month. How many Abrams are we producing a month? How many? Yeah, I'm just saying,
significant ammo shortage that we need to address.
And the ammo thing. So you wanted to talk. So the ammo thing is another thing. We've gone through all of our stocks of 105 ammo to the point of where we've rated our wartime reserves at least 40 times. Think about this. This isn't production. This is us going to our wartime stockpiles and saying, here's some more ammunition. We've gone to the point of where we're using what most consider an illegal round. I don't like cluster munitions. In Operation Dark Heart, when I was in Afghanistan, we were on a convoy coming back from Kabul to Bagram on a special mission convoy. I don't want to get into what we were doing, but we were the FBI was with us, and so the FBI vehicle, a Toyota 4x4, blew a tire. So we had to pull over. You pull over like you do if you have a flat tire, and in our convoy we set up security around them. We had two other vehicles. We set up around them. And so as I walked up past the FBI vehicle where they pulled over, within 5 meters in front of the vehicle, had they gone 5 more meters, they would have hit one of our cluster munitions. It was sitting there with the little things poking up. So they would have hit that.
And it was unexploded?
It was unexploded. Yes, it was unexploded. Wow. And we had to call EOD in. So I'm just saying that my personal experience, you don't want those things on the battlefield. They don't, that 2% to 5% unexplosion, that's not good. It's just telling you, Jimmy, it's not good. You don't want 2 to 5% of those things just kind of hanging around.
Yeah.
So my point being, to your point, the 105 issue is exemplary, because right now the Russians are producing 10,000 rounds a month when we can barely provide them 1,000. So nobody on our side, and again, I'm not pro or against either side. I'm simply stating the fact is,
you're a realist.
Nobody on our side has said, go ramp up production to 10,000 rounds a month to match Russia. We're not. They're not. So that's why we're rating
I mean, are our military companies, are they producing? I mean, are we in full
A
production?
thousand a month. Yes, they're producing 1,000 a month.
Well, I mean, we have to be producing for one, Ukraine, two, Taiwan, and three for our reserves.
Well, that's part of what and I've said this publicly in several interviews. We are this 800 plus $billion budget. You think that would go to that? No, we're not. We're not addressing this in our current budget, Jimmy. Why is that? Think about that. Why
First of all, do
aren't
we
we
even know
saying?
where the budget money goes to? Do they even
Well, we
release
don't. That's part of the problem. Yes, that's part of the problem. I'm part of the Pentagon budget campaign. Talk about realistic. It's a transpartisan organization that looks at Pentagon spending. They promote really radical things like audits of the Pentagon, understanding where the overseas contingency funds (OCO) goes, because that's their big slush fund. There's all these things that I think left, right, center, anybody needs to be concerned about. But anytime someone's in charge, they don't want to have to answer these questions. So yes, you and I think, would agree. It's like, why aren't we actually putting $1 billion or $2 billion towards updating and increasing our production of 105 rounds because it's
they
needed?
need to be
Oh, well,
producing everything. I mean,
exactly.
like
But they're not.
well into the reserves. I mean, we need to be replenishing. I mean,
absolutely. You and I would agree, and I promote this. But again, the Biden administration, to include the Pentagon, and I've said this, Lloyd Austin and Mark Milley should be uh, uh, prosecuted over their lack of attention on this issue, on just this issue. They should have been the ones screaming the loudest about having to replenish our stock of 105 and other munitions that we've degraded. But they're not. They're simply going along and acting politically. Remember, so much of what's going on now is political theater based on what the White House wants done. And again, I know some of these people involved, and I'm constantly criticizing them because they're acting politically, not logically regarding what needs to be done to reestablish an effective defense. I don't even understand how this is
a political matter. Like, who would not agree?
Well, I wouldn't either, Jimmy, but it is
more ammo of every single kind to replace our reserves. They're trying to send Ukraine ammo every month. Taiwan's trying to buy ammo. We need ammo from every which avenue.
They're rating Taiwan right now for, have you ever heard of the Hawk missile?
I don't think
the Hawk missile. The Hawk missile was a Cold War anti-air system. Basically, it's a big old missile. You fire it off in the air and you hope it hits airplanes. They're so desperate right now. We, the United States, are raiding Taiwan of those missiles to give them to Ukraine. And these are Cold War. This is like giving someone a 1979 Pinto and saying, "Here you go, have a good time on the interstates."
I mean, that should be a huge part of the budget, is to just and heaven forbid,
I think so,
have an escalation with North Korea, with Russia, with China. They try to take something in Poland. Anything happens, and we actually need ammo, or
if I were in
ammo, or anything else more than the status quo now.
I agree. So if I were in charge, I would immediately go to Congress saying, "Thanks for the money. I'm going to redistribute this. I'm going to take what you've given me and redo it."
I mean, they get $800.
You can do that.
$24 billion a year.
Absolutely, absolutely. So you can do it. I mean, again, this is political will. Nobody has the political will to change the objectives and goals of the White House. And again, if I were Austin, I would just say, Mr. President, I can't do this. Either you let me to reconfigure the budget to what I need, or else I'm going to resign. And they never resign. They just take their marching orders and go do things. And it's sad. So I'm just telling you, I agree with you. We should, but here we are. So.
All right. So, well, thank you so much. I appreciate everything. I'll definitely be having you back on the show here. Everybody,
thanks, Jimmy.
Thoughts here in the comments. If you haven't yet, make sure to subscribe down below to our YouTube channel. Click the bell icon. It's completely free to do so. New videos come out here on our YouTube channel every single day. Thank you so much for liking, and please share these videos with everybody you know on Facebook, Twitter, and thank you so much, Anthony or Tony. And we will definitely have you back here on the YouTube channel. I'll link you to the part 1 video here. You can click here for that part 1 video with Lieutenant Colonel Tony Shaffer. You can also click here to see the newest meeting, which just happened with North Korea, China, and Russia, which has a lot of people concerned. Click on one of those videos next. Thanks for watching, guys, and I'll see you in the next video.